Hey guys, just finished watching The Flash, Season 4, Episode 19, Fury Rogues. Fury Rogue. And this episode was really interesting. We start off this episode with Wells. He's getting sick. He's losing his memory and stuff from the stuff that's going on with when he put on the particle accelerator. He put on the thinking cap, and he added some dark matter to it, and he overdosed himself, and he's starting to have some side effects from that, which is interesting that they're doing that because it's very similar to the storyline that we just had yesterday over on Supergirl with John Jones's father starting to lose his mind and it kind of affecting other people and stuff, and he started to lose his memory. He's starting to have that thing. So it's interesting that they're doing the same story, the same-ish storyline, same concept. Different versions of it, but the same kind of memory-based storylines on both shows. So it could be a coincidence, but it's really interesting to see whether, since they're all kind of, I assume these guys all must be right in the same building. I would assume it would be cool that they have the same offices, the writers. And then we get Cisco wants his own thinking cap, and then we go to Earth X, and Black Siren is they go to Earth X to get Leo to help take care of the fallout. That they have to move the fallout guy who's all green and stuff, and they go to Earth X since they no longer have Killer Frost to be able to do his job. They go to Earth X to get Leo, and Black Siren comes across with him, and it's Earth X, or Black Siren, known as Siren X type thing, and that's really good, cool there. At first I thought I saw her, she had the mask on from the Earth X crossover, and I was like, oh no, did they just get a stunt double, and they're just, they got like Kitty Cassidy's stunt double to come over and not Kitty Cassidy or someone that looks like her, and they threw on the mask and that's it. That's sort of how they're going to make it cheaper type thing. That's what I thought. I was like, oh, they just got her, especially because we didn't see, if they only had her for like the first little bit, I was like, okay, maybe they didn't have her kind of walk over and just do it. But it was nice that they actually got Kitty Cassidy to jump over for the whole season, for the whole episode type thing, and that was really fun for that. Now, if it's just the beginning of it, yeah, they could have just gone away with like just a stunt double and just put over the mask on type thing, and that they could have done it that way. But it was really cool the way they did it, how they got her to come across, because it would be cool to see, how close to the sets kind of, do they film in Vancouver? Do they film very close to each other? Or do they film separately from each other, try not to do things so that it looks like the same spot, and things look the same whenever they're filming. Arrow and Flash are all supposed to be within the continuities of the show. They're supposed to be separate cities. They're supposed to be, a little bit far away. I mean, it's easier for Flash to run over and go see him, but it's a lot different for Arrow to try and run over to Star City. So, Central City, it's a little bit more longer since he has to probably drive over or something like that. So, it is interesting to see things like that, to see how easy it is for them to have her crossover. She's already just waiting around on the Arrow set, and why not have her do a cameo over here? And that is really cool for them to be able to do that. So then Cisco ends up tries on his cap, doesn't work. Black Siren or Siren X, we find out that Siren X can actually hear from afar, so that's an interesting idea to play with. That'll be really cool to see. And then we get Barry with no mask around Neil, who's the Fallout guy, which was weird because Barry and his secret identity, it's getting a little weird. I mean, I remember back in the days with Smallville, it was the whole secret identity thing was obviously different in Smallville because, he didn't really have the alter ego Superman to have a secret identity, but he did have the whole secret thing. And on here on Arrow and Supergirl and all these shows, everyone knows that, not many people, the only people left in all 4 shows, the only secret identity left is between Lena and Supergirl. And I don't know why Barry here wasn't, why Barry here just walked around with this guy. This is some random guy. Yeah, he maybe helped him and all that stuff, but it's just, maybe I forget that he actually revealed himself to them, but he's a little too nonchalant with his secret identity, and I'm hoping that next season, or even this season, that it comes to bite him it bites him in the butt at some point. Now, maybe not with Fallout specifically, but I think the idea that, DeVoe knows exactly who he is and all that stuff, and I think that idea needs to really start attacking him back to himself, so he can go back to the whole reason why he needs a secret identity is to protect the people that he loves. And now the whole point is that they're all kind of helping and fighting with him. There's no reason for him to really have a secret identity, because the whole point, the reason why Superman and Batman and not so much Batman, but Spider-Man and all these characters, all these superheroes have secret identities so that they're lovable and they're not attacked by the criminals that they fight, type thing. So with Barry, in all these shows, they all can handle themselves more or less. So it is an interesting idea that he's walking around with the mask and stuff. But I'd like to see that come and bite him in the butt, at least for next season or something. Because at this point they've become nonchalant with their secret identities, and he's become so easily careless, reckless with it. I need to see that, just see him go back to a little bit more, just be a little bit more secretive with his secret identity, at least going back to maybe not season 1 type thing, but the idea of it, blurring his face whenever he needs to, vibrating and stuff, changing his voice and all that stuff, just to be able to keep his secret identity, because he needs to be able to keep that, because I like to see that playing into it. So we almost had that when Barry was in prison for killing DeVoe. They were always kind of had the idea, he needed to stay in prison to keep his secret identity, so we were playing with that a little bit. But here, she's just nonchalant, so that kind of annoyed me there. So then Barry later on tries to use the tuning fork on DeVoe when they decide when they're in the middle of moving him, and it doesn't work on DeVoe because he now has Ralph Dibny's body, who he's able to kind of stretch and change at will. Now, what is interesting about that is, I guess if he absorbs the powers too, does he also absorb the powers if DeVoe changes to another body? Does that mean that he loses? I guess he'd still keep Ralph Dibny's kind of elasticity body and still be impervious to the tuning fork. Now that would be an interesting idea to see where things are going to go with that. So that was interesting with that. Tuning fork is no longer effective on DeVoe. Then we see the Black Siren shows up, or Earth X Siren. So it's Siren X shows up, stops DeVoe, and takes Neil, takes the Fallout. Then Wells ends up showing Cisco what happens and how about with Gideon and all that stuff, how he's overdosed himself with dark matter and he's losing his memory. DeVoe ends up failing because the Flash failed. DeVoe missed the reason why DeVoe failed is because he didn't perceive the power of emotions and how that could screw up everyone's plans. Black Siren ends up bringing Fallout to the GCPD. Everyone takes him all out. And when Black Siren's at the GCPD, she ends up launching her scream, and then Barry comes in because she ends up hearing Barry come from far away, which is an interesting idea. But I would have loved to see a scene with Barry kind of her screaming, even though she hears him coming, but him arriving faster than she could scream, because there's no way that her vocal cords, whatever makes the power, gives her the sonic powers, is not faster than Barry, who's faster than the speed of light, faster than time itself and all that stuff. So it would have been cool to see him, a slow-mo shot of him, even if it only lasted like a minute or two on screen, a slow-mo shot of him, what does Black Siren's scream look like in flash time? A slow-mo shot of him moving around, and can he touch that if it's when it's frozen in midair? What can he do to that? Can he affect it? I think that'd be an interesting idea to see, to play with that. To see, would have been cool to see that instead of him getting hit by Black Siren, which he should be able to get hit by him because he should be faster than her, even faster than sound. It would be quite interesting to see him, watching him dodge the sound at a high speed, and that would have been really cool, but they missed that opportunity there. So she screamed, knocking Barry down, and then she ends up taking off what's-his-face's nuke and kind of lets Fallout loose on the GCPD, taking out everyone. And then making everyone sick and stuff, and they end up taking her out. Now, at the end of this, though, we don't see what happens to Black Siren. Barry ends up overcoming and, accepting Ralph's death and kind of overcoming all that, which was quite cool with that. That was quite interesting, playing with that. And then he ends up just, super slamming her into the wall type thing and knocking her out. So I'm assuming that Barry then goes and puts this Earth X version of Laurel, a Black Siren, into the pipeline and just kind of locking her up somewhere at CCPD with meta power cuffs and all that stuff, or somewhere in Argus or something, just where they put out Fallout type thing, which is an interesting idea because I don't see Siren X going back. What is she going to go do back to her Nazi-ridden town where she's lost and there's no more of her friends? She's running, and where she can make a new life for herself over here. I think that could be an interesting idea to play with, especially going into Arrow Season 7, having 2 Black Sirens to deal with. Could be quite interesting to see 2 different versions. Could be quite fun to play with. It'd be quite interesting to see how they do that. Now, I don't know if they would do that over on Arrow, having 2 versions of Katie Cassidy doing the same thing. It is quite, I guess that is expensive to do, but we'll have to wait and see if we end up getting anything like that. I think it could be quite cool having 2 different 2 different versions of Katie Cassidy doing different things and playing with all that. Could be quite fun to going into Arrow Season 7, and also just having Katie Cassidy also on here. I think 2 different versions could be cool, but I don't see them, if they bring her back, or Siren X, I don't see them doing that other than on one show. They're not going to have one on here, one on there at the same time, because she can't film both times at the same time. But if she's on one show, both characters can be on one show. She can just, do split screen, double clone herself on one show. That could be quite cool playing with that. It could be quite fun seeing that and seeing where things are going to go with this and how things are going to play. Maybe just as this, as Black Siren over on Arrow, the Earth 2 version, as she starts becoming good and stuff like that, dealing with Quentin Lance and all, she ends up getting reminded of how evil she wants to be by Earth X, and seeing and having Earth Season 7 villains be 2 versions of Laurel type thing. I think that could be quite interesting to see that. It could be quite fun playing with that. It really would mess up with Quentin Lance, would mess with Oliver, and mess with everyone. I think it could be quite fun to seeing that. So then we find out at the end that Caitlin does some more tests on herself to find out what happened to Killer Frost, because she did some tests earlier on in the episode. She's been monitoring activity and seeing if DeVoe took her powers. And it did seem like he did. He hasn't used any of her powers, so it's clear that he didn't really steal her powers. He just turned off her powers. And so she finds out the Killer Frost is still inside of her a little bit, because there's no more dark matter version, but there's still some frost or something like that inside of her. So that's quite interesting to see. It's a different version. What is it going to mean? How is it going to affect if it's no longer the base of the powers of the Killer Frost powers? Is totally different. I think that could be an interesting idea to see that. And how does that affect? How does it change? Is it going to be the same Killer Frost with the same memories, same one that's that was building a relationship with Caitlin, that has all the same memories? The one that was dealing with Adam Black and all that stuff, or could it be a whole new version of it, different version? And it could be quite cool to seeing that and seeing how that's going to affect her powers and how things are going to go from there. Now, obviously, I don't think it's going to affect her powers too much, because they already have a CGI model that they'd use for her blast, so they're just going to reuse that file. They're not going to create a whole new colored blast and all that stuff, because it's just too expensive, right? But I think changing the character, and is it going to change the character and see how that could play, could be quite interesting to see that, and building out that relationship again could be quite fun. But ultimately, I'd like to see the same version come out of it at the end of the day. But I think just whenever we get Killer Frost back, it could be a different version. Same thing, but just doesn't have the same memories, because it's ultimately messed up after the encounter with DeVoe, and I think that could be quite fun with that. But then at the end of this episode, we end on the weirdest note where DeVoe still ends up getting Fallout at some point. So it's unclear whether or not, because we end the episode with DeVoe and he's looking at Fallout on there, and he's hooked up to this VR type thing. Is Fallout in a lab that's run by DeVoe, or is Fallout in a lab that's run by wherever Barry put him out, Argus or whatever, and DeVoe was just hacked into it and he's able to get what he wants by breaking into it later on. So it's unclear what's going to happen with that, and how DeVoe's plan for him, and how it's still able to get out. Like, what was the point of all this episode if DeVoe's plan, if it all worked out for DeVoe when it went? What if he just let things go, like he said at the end of the episode? So that's really going to be interesting to see where things go with that. How they kind of how they explain, he did nothing. His plans all failed. He ended up doing nothing at the end of the episode, and it still ends up working in his favor. So that'll be cool to see how he ends up using Fallout, because at this point it just seems like, what was the purpose of this episode? If it was just why did DeVoe even do anything? Why was there anything? Why was it just, we moved him there, that's where he is now, and that's where DeVoe is able to pick him up and do his own thing. So what was the purpose of this, other than showing us that DeVoe was failed when Barry froze due to emotions, and he can't predict emotions, and that's one of his weak points. And that's an interesting idea to play with, to see that, and how he didn't just perceive that if he just let everything go naturally, it would all work out at the end of the day. So I think that's going to be cool to see that. Is this a sign of him kind of slowly failing? And at the same time, if it is him slowly failing, which is an interesting idea to play with, but I don't want Barry to the reason why Barry wins and they defeat DeVoe is because DeVoe ends up going too powerful and then kind of failing himself, and it's ultimately not Team Flash that ends up defeating DeVoe, but the fact that DeVoe just kind of ends up destroying himself type thing, and that would just seem kind of anticlimactic to me, to have DeVoe start just his brain just start to falling apart, and that's what kills him type thing. He ends up destroying himself rather than the Team Flash actually defeating him. I think they've gone through so much, and we need to see the resolution of them actually defeating him, rather than him just kind of end up destroying himself throughout the process. That would just be kind of anticlimactic to me, to ending it that way. So it looks like that's where they're going so far, but we'll have to wait and see where things are going to go from here. So I like the things that they set up in here. I like to see where things are going to go with that, especially like I said with the Siren X, and see how things are going to go with that character, if they're ever going to bring that character over to Arrow at any point. I think it's an interesting idea. It kind of is familiar to how they did with Black Siren originally, so I feel like they didn't choose this character for no reason. It was an interesting idea. I feel like if this wasn't a throwaway character or whatnot, they would have made if they didn't have plans for her, they would have made it clear that she's going back to Earth X, into some sort of prison that Leo has type thing on Earth X. So since they didn't clarify that, I feel like they probably have some sort of plans for her, and I think that's really going to be interesting to see that, because also they could have just had they could have left her on Earth X and just have a stunt double come over and just put the mask on and keep that Earth X mask on the whole time, and not have Katie Cassidy, just have her stunt double come over, or someone who looks like her, and throw a wig over and all that stuff. You could pass her off past anyone about her height, off as her. So I think because they specifically chose her and they had her throughout this episode, and they didn't specifically they didn't reference what happens to her at the end, they don't confirm whether or not she's gone back to Earth X or anything, then I think that they also said Katie Cassidy, I think that they have some sort of plans for her, so that could be cool again, just seeing that. Maybe this version could go to it would be cool to see this version going to Legend of Tomorrow. I think it'd be quite cool to see Sarah dealing with a version of Black Siren, and having a version of Black Siren being permanently on the Legend of Tomorrow team could be quite fun, dealing with that. But at the same time, Katie Cassidy can't be doing both shows full time, so that wouldn't work out. But the idea of having two different versions of Laurel at the same time could be quite fun, dealing with that and seeing where things go. Hopefully though, they don't end up doing, it could be an interesting idea if they end up killing off Black Siren, the one we have on Arrow, and Earth 2 Black Siren, and they end up just replacing her with Earth X version. Could be an interesting idea, but if you're watching all three shows, you could see that coming. It seems kind of predictable that they might do that. But it's only predictable if you're watching both shows. But it's still something that, even if you're not watching The Flash, and you're only watching Arrow, it's something that you might end up predicting, because if you might see, it's going to be all over social media, Black Siren, another version of Black Siren. So it's going to be cool to see where things are going with this and where they have plans with her. But I feel like there are some plans in there. They wouldn't have set this up like this for a one-shot deal. I think if it would have been a one-shot deal, they would have made sure to confirm that, to make it clear that she's gone back to Earth X and she's in prison type thing. So we'll have to wait and see where things go with her. from now, but it'll be quite cool to see that. So let me know what you think, guys, about this episode in the comments below. Season 4, episode 19 of The Flash, and I'll see you guys in the next video. Peace out.
I'm Captain America, here to talk to you about one of the most valuable traits a soldier or student can have.
Subscribing.
Sometimes is the key to victory. Sometimes it leads to very little, and it seems like it's not worth it. And you wonder why you waited so long for something so disappointing. How many more of these?
You're still here.
Don't forget to like, comment, and subscribe, guys. Peace.
It's over.